Jerry and Charlie riding through the airwaves, bringing you the heat. Come on, pull your bands, now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Chase Station.
Today is Thursday, April 17th. The Mets are in first place in your National League East Division, 11-7 on the year. Just wrapped up a 3-3 road trip with a bit of a deflating loss in Minnesota as the boys come back home for another homestand. I am your only host for today, Jack, aka Jolly Olive. Not joining me today is Jerry Blevins, unavailable till next week. Was doing some SNY pre and post work with Gary Apple. Did a great job as always. So I'm going to hold down the fort today because I thought waiting until next week would have been a little too long before episodes, or between episodes, I should say. And I want to get an episode out all about this road trip. So I'm going to ride it solo today. So yeah, if you were expecting Jerry's soft and sultry voice, I'm so sorry to disappoint, but we're still going to knock out probably a half hour of talk today. If you enjoy Chase Station, please leave a like on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave us a review on a podcast app that you're using currently. All that stuff really helps out, and we really appreciate it. Check out Field of Dreams Whiskey. As always, the link is down below. I feel like doing a solo podcast makes it sound more NPR style, where I'm like more calm and collected. I don't know. But this is going to be fun. Yeah, tough series loss in Minnesota. The Mets picked up a series win in Sacramento, which means they went 3-3 in this road trip, which on the surface sounds fine, but they played a couple teams that I honestly think that they were much, much better than. So getting that 4-2 would have been great, and it's especially annoying because some of the games they lost, especially that last one in Minnesota, felt incredibly winnable. But the story of it all has been pretty similar, even from their 6-game win streak, which largely took place at home. The offense hasn't really gone outside of Pete Alonso, and the pitching continues to be spectacular. This is a cron pod, as most John Boy podcasts are. So we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start in Sacramento. First off, let's just talk about, I guess, the viewing experience as a fan. Going to a Major League Baseball game and sitting on the grass looks like a lot of fun. Not going to lie. I know that the circumstances of this team being in Sacramento are not great, and I fully acknowledge that, and I do wish this team was still in Oakland where they belong, and I kind of wish Jerry was here to speak on just his, perspective on the A's right now, a team that's in flux, a little bit lost without a home. But the Mets were one of the first teams to venture to Sacramento as a visiting team to play these A's, and I learned a lot about that team, a team that I was pretty curious about. I'm excited about that young core. Lawrence Butler is a very electric player. Tyler Soderstrom looks like the real deal. Jacob Wilson's batting stance has me a little worried about his career. But if it's working, baby. I'm not one to judge. But this A's team, young and talented, but not very disciplined. And you saw that in this series. Game 1 was easily the most competitive game. Griffin Canning looked dynamite through 5 innings, and then, the Mets have been trying to get more length out of their starters, and we'll talk about how that was a factor in one of the games of this series as well. Shout out Kodai Senga. They tried to get him into that 6th inning, and then things kind of fell apart. The Mets lost their decent lead, but Pete Alonso was the story in this game. 3 for 3, 3 RBI, and a key solo home run off Jose Leclerc late in the game that ended up mattering a ton because Edwin Diaz was not at his best. I gave him the non-save opportunity excuse last time out when he struggled. This time out, this was just flat out bad. Didn't look comfortable on the mound. A pair of walks, another wild pitch. Edwin Diaz leads baseball in wild pitches right now. That's a little alarming. I don't love that. But he gets the job done. He bends but does not break, as Gary Cohen tends to say too often, I think, when Edwin Diaz is pitching. And the Mets were able to grab game 1 on the road. Game 2 was a tough watch. I mean, the offense looked absolutely lifeless, and there's going to be a couple games here where I say that sentence. But David Peterson continues to impress. I mean, I know if you're a lover of advanced metrics and baseball savant bubbles, for some reason, analytics can't figure out why David Peterson is suddenly good. But if you watch him pitch, I think it's going back a little bit to what I said last time, just a lot more comfort and ease with runners on. Just overall looks more poised, honestly, on the mound. I feel like just years of experience and new pitch arsenal, not so reliant on his slider anymore. Didn't walk a batter in this game, which was really cool. He had a really nice start, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, no walks. But anytime the Mets face someone they've traded or spurned in some way, and on this day, it was JT Ginn who shut the Mets offense down, 5 1/3 innings, 1 earned run in his season debut. He looked good. I still like that Chris Bassett trade, but that has the potential to age kind of poorly if this kid turns out to be a stud. Actually, when we went to Arizona in March and interviewed a bunch of players at the CAA house, if you haven't seen those, there's a bunch of shorts on my Instagram, so go check that out. One of the players was Lawrence Butler that we got to talk to, and he said that his pick for a teammate that he thinks everyone is sleeping on, which is one of the questions we asked everyone, was JT Ginn, and he kind of went in depth about why he likes him so much, and you saw that in this start. The annoying part of this game was that the Mets got a runner on in every inning of JT Ginn's outing, and they only scored 1 run, and it was on a solo home run. Brandon Nimmo, who punched a pair of home runs on this trip, although it was not a great trip for Brandon Nimmo, especially that Minnesota series, which we'll get into. The Mets got the tying run up against Mason Miller, but against that level of velocity, the Mets haven't looked great against fastballs in general this season. It looks like they're still kind of waking up on the offensive side of things, and when you got a guy that's thrown 103, I never really believed in that rally. They would lose game 2 3-1. But that set up a series finale, kind of a non-mathematical must-win. You don't want to, lose a road series to kick it off, and, you want to keep the good times rolling. And the Mets came out in the finale, and they looked great. 8-0 is, I think, a little bit misleading for how this game went. The Mets put on 4 runs in the 9th inning with a myriad of miscues from the A's defense, which we'll talk about in just a sec. After we talk about Kodai Senga, who looked magnificent, easily the best start for any Mets starter this entire season. I was really excited for this matchup, Senga versus Severino. Severino, of course, in a revenge game after he said that he wanted to come back to the Mets. He said he would have taken a 2-year, I believe it was $40 million deal. And that, yes, he would have taken 2 years for $40 million. The Mets gave that money to Frankie Montas. Severino signs for 3 years and $67 million with the A's. And he looked good in this outing. He allowed just 1 run through 6 innings. It was Luis Torrens that got the big hit. He's been swinging a decent bat. That's been a welcome surprise with Francisco Alvarez's absence, has been Luis Torrens on both sides of the ball, even through a slight injury. But outdueling Severino on the mound was Kodai Senga. 7 innings, the first Mets starter to finish 7 innings in an outing. Hopefully we get more and more of that because we're going to need it. This bullpen's been doing a ton of heavy lifting, but Kodai Senga gives them the day. 7 innings, no earned runs, 4 strikeouts, kept the A's off balance all game long, generated a ton of whiffs despite that lower strikeout total for a 7-inning outing. And then, as I alluded to before, the Mets poured it on in the 9th inning. It got to the point where I felt kind of bad. Vientos got a nice knock. That should have been a single, but Miguel Andujar, a lack of effort there, lets that one skate by. It turns into a double. Luis Torrens, his stats get padded a little bit by J.J. Bleday. Either him or Seth Brown, I forget who it was, but the light was blinding apparently in center field, so they duck out of a fly ball. It bounces over for a ground rule double, and then Tyrone Taylor reaches base on a Jacob Wilson throwing error. Just a tough inning for the A's defense, and it has me a little worried about their fundamentals in that hot sun as we're going to play some summer games in Sacramento. It's going to get hot out there. Not excited for that. So I'm glad these guys got to go out there in April when the weather is perfect in Sacramento and go win a series against the A's. Yeah, this was just the Mets didn't play their best baseball, but this was good team beating worst team. Talent prevailed here. Juan Soto didn't do a ton, honestly, in this series. He was kept off balance pretty much the whole time. Lindor had a tough go of it, although I think he got on base in pretty much every game. It was the Pete Alonso show. It was getting knocks at the right time, and it was pitching once again. Pretty clean series win, and it had me feeling pretty good about going into Minnesota. The Twins were lost at sea by the time we got there. They're dealing with the Pablo Lopez injury. They're dealing with Carlos Correa's underperformance. They looked ripe for the taking in this series, and you saw that in game 1. The Mets went out there, and they just held the Twins at bay. Clay Holmes. The final line isn't as impressive, 5 innings, 1 earned run, but those first 4 innings were utterly dominant. He struck out the side to start the game, got 2 more in the second inning, so 5 punch-outs through 2. He allowed just 1 base runner through 3. And then that 5th inning was just, I don't really know, just kind of lost his footing. He went walk, hit by pitch, wild pitch, walk, before getting a couple clutch field outs and a strikeout of Byron Buxton to end his outing. But he looked poised to go deep into this game, and then things just kind of went off the rails for him. So a decent outing, and I continue to be wrong about what I thought Clay Holmes would be. I thought the Mets would just basically translate his arsenal to his starter role and say, hey, be this ground ball machine behind this great defense that we have. No, Clay Holmes has been one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball. In fact, his 12.81 K per 9 is 4th in MLB right now of any pitcher who has a minimum of 10 innings pitched. So he's been one of the most prolific strikeout pitchers in the game. Easily the most prolific strikeout pitcher on the Mets. And he showed that in the start against Minnesota, generated a ton of whiffs. The sinker was working, the sweeper was working. He looked great. Mark Vientos showed some signs of life on this road trip. He got a key RBI double to break a 1-1 tie in this game. And then Juan Soto, who his previous at-bats in this game were pretty abysmal. I mean, not very Juan Soto-esque. He had a tough series against the A's. He breaks his slump with a big 2-run homer to basically ice this game and make it 5-1 because the bullpen was cranking. Brazoban, Garrett, and Stanek combined for 4 shutout innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts in this one. They looked great. The Mets just held the Twins down. The offense really didn't get anything going. It's kind of just the Matt Wallner show right now. He's been really their only big hitter. Ty France has been doing okay, so that's good to see. I like Ty France. But the Mets take the opener here. I was hoping to just keep the momentum going. We had Tyler McGill, who had been our best starter, going in the second game. But he never looked comfortable in game 2. This was easily the most shaky McGill outing. His final line is still decent, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, but 4 runs overall because of a key Lindor error in the 3rd inning. It could have been the Mets get out unscathed. Instead, they surrender a pair of runs, which was tough. This one was frustrating. I mean, I think McGill could have pitched a little bit better. The Mets got a pair of home runs from Pete Alonso and then Juan Soto homers for a second straight day. That was nice to see. But this was another one where the offense never really looked like they got going. They relied on the long ball here, and that's not the Mets offense at their best. But we were starting to see a little bit of Luis Angel Acuna get more playing time here. He starts for a 3rd consecutive day. We have news of the Jose Siri injury, so Tyrone Taylor's getting reps. It looks like this is the Mets lineup that's taking shape. Starting Marte gets another start at the cleanup spot. We'll see about that. But yeah, the Mets offense never really got going in this one. Bailey Ober should be great. That dude is massive. He throws so hard. His changeup has such zip. The Mets still get 3 runs off him. Max Kranick, unfortunately, looks human for the first time, surrenders a pair of runs. That puts the game basically out of reach, and the Mets lose game 2, 6-3, which takes us to the finale, which on paper I was pretty nervous about. Griffin Canning had some sort of illness, so he's unable to start the finale. Like I said before, if for 5 innings, Griffin Canning can give you exactly what you need. Instead, the Mets have to go the bullpen route. They have to throw a bullpen game today, with the bulk of it going to Justin Hagenman, who was a guy we saw a lot of in spring training, more than I thought we would have. And he was going to get the bulk of today's game. Huascar Brazoban opens the game with a shutout innings, and then Justin Hagenman, with his family in attendance, takes the bump for 3 1/3 innings, and honestly, looks great. I was really pleasantly surprised by how well this kid pitched. Another product of the Mets pitching lab. He makes his MLB debut, 3 1/3 innings, 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts. Had some trouble here and there, especially in that 3rd inning with back-to-back hits, but got out of it, stayed poised. The Mets made a clutch fielding play at home to get Harrison Bader. And you'll see close plays are a theme in this game, a frustrating theme, might I add. Jose Budo takes them out in relief of Hagenman in the 5th inning, and in the 6th inning, we see a potential inning ground ball by Willie Castro. Budo goes to cover the bag, catches it. You can see on replay from stills, the runner's clearly out. Ump rules him safe. The Mets had already lost their challenge in this game. Budo instinctively argues the call because I think he knows, just from catch to foot hitting the base, that he was out. Bad play. The runner comes around to score. The Twins get a key insurance run to go up 3-0. And it hurts because the Mets actually have a great rally in this game against a really good relief pitcher in Griffin Jax. Lindor singles, Pete Alonso doubles him home, Jesse Winker doubles him home, and Luis Angel Acuna, who I want to talk a lot about in this episode, ties the game with an RBI single to make it 3-3. It would have been 3-2 had they gotten the call right, and then Edwin Diaz comes in for a scoreless inning right after, which would have been the save. Instead, we go to extras. Pete Alonso leads off the 10th inning with a walk, which quickly is followed by a ground ball double play, a ball that I thought had a chance of getting out of the infield and instead does not. Results in 2 outs, and then Brandon Nimmo swings first pitch, hits a foul pop fly, and that ends our 10th inning. And, you know, when you're the road team with this new extra inning rule and you don't score, it just feels like an automatic loss. That's what ended up happening. Reed Garrett comes in, throws 3 pitches, Ty France gets a knock, Tyrone Taylor misplays the ball, and there you have it. Harrison Bader had his fingerprints all over this game. I believe he comes around to score the winning run, or excuse me, it was Byron Buxton, but Bader had a couple clutch catches, a lot of hard hit balls in this game. He had some nice things to say about the Mets franchise as well. But yeah, the Mets lose a pretty disappointing series in Minnesota, a team that I think they definitely should have beaten, a team that's vulnerable right now. I know that you're on the road and it's cold. We saw Hoodie Soto in this series, which is pretty funny. But yeah, the Mets lose this series. They end up going 3-3 on the road trip, which I guess is not the worst thing in the world. They're still first place in the NL East. The Phillies had a much tougher stretch this past week. But the Mets got to come home and clean it up a little bit. These were teams that they should have beaten in both series. They, you know, kind of barely got by the A's in game 1 of that series, and they blew this game in game 3. I think this easily could have been a 4-2 road trip had a couple things click their way. With that being said, there's still a ton of things going right for this team. One of them being Luis Angel Acuna, who I want to take a step back and really talk about for a second. We were clamoring, I think, for a little more playing time for Luis Angel Acuna. Brett Beatty got a real decent look on the homestand in the beginning of the A's series as well. A lot of playing time and just did not look good at the plate. Was lacking the aggression that he showed in spring training while simultaneously not working his counts deep enough and chasing a ton while still playing a decent second base in the field, which again has been a pretty big surprise for me. Brett Beatty looks really comfortable at second base, which I guess is a silver lining in all of this, that maybe he could be a utility guy off the bench. But it's very clear to, I think, most Mets fans that Luis Angel Acuna should be playing every day, at least until Jeff McNeil gets back, and then we can kind of open up this discussion again. He started 5 of the 6 games on this road trip. He's hitting very well. Since April 8th, he's 8 for 21, which is a .381 batting average, 4 stolen bases in that window, which is real nice. That's a nice dimension to his game. 3 walks to 4 punch outs, a .935 OPS. He's been wonderful as the reset guy at the bottom of the lineup. And, you know, not a lot of Mets hitters are going well right now, and he's one of the few that you can point to and say there's something there. And that trade continues to look better and better for the Mets as Acuna continues to develop. Because, by the way, I mean, how old is he? 23, I think? 23 years old, and he already looks like he's steadying the momentum he had from last year into another fine start this year. Above league average offensively now. Got those numbers up since a slow start. On the other side of things with the offense, for me, 2 guys really stood out in this road trip as key strugglers. One of them is not Juan Soto, who has been the discussion of a lot of things. So I guess we'll get into. I don't really want to talk about the post quotes, but I guess we will. We'll touch on it briefly. Brandon Nimmo hit a pair of home runs on this road trip, but otherwise looked rough at the plate. I think he's one of the larger problems on the team right now. I mean, Lindor, you know you're going to get a slow start, and he still had some clutch hits here and there. Juan Soto still has more walks than strikeouts. He's still, you know, a 130 OPS plus right now. For me, it's Nimmo, who is in the meat of this order and is coming up a ton with runners in scoring position. He has not clicked yet. He's hitting 154 with runners in scoring position this year, a 489 OPS versus an 883 OPS with the empty bases. So is it time for a lineup switch? I don't know, and I don't really know who you put in that 4 or 5 slot instead of Nimmo, because that's logically where he ends up considering the construction of the lineup. It's going to be Lindor and Soto at the top. You want Pete behind Soto. Nimmo doesn't really fit into the cards there unless you move Lindor, which I don't think anybody wants. He looked so good in the leadoff spot last year, and he's still getting his feet under him. I think we all expect him to have a slower April and then come out of it. So there's definitely just some questions to be answered there. Since April 9th, he's 5 for 27. He has the 2 home runs, but 6 strikeouts to 3 walks. Just not a lot to point to with Brandon Nimmo. And you like to think that a couple of these games could have gone the Mets' way with a couple clutch hits from the middle of the order, which they just haven't really gotten. You've seen flashes from the bottom of the order. Luis Torrens and Luis Angel Acuna, of course, the top, you can rely on with Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. Just got to get the meat of that order going. Maybe more playing time for Jesse Winker. Maybe move Marte out of cleanup. I don't know what the answer is right now. I think the answer actually really is getting Jeff McNeil and Francisco Alvarez back in the fold and really lengthening that lineup. We'll touch on injury updates for them in a little bit. And then, as we alluded to before, Brett Baty lost some playing time on this road trip. He's been hitting a little bit better as of late, 4 for his last 13. But the big thing for me, 16 strikeouts in 40 plate appearances and no walks still. He's one of a few players in baseball right now with that many plate appearances and no walks on the season. And as Jeff McNeil and Francisco Alvarez get closer, there's some roster questions that need to be answered. I think, obviously it's going to be Hayden Singer when Alvarez is ready, which is unfortunate because Singer's actually looked really good at the plate, defensively, and hitting a little bit too. Not bad. But when McNeil's ready, I don't want to see Acuna go down. I know for sure it's not going to be Vientos. They have way too much stock in him. He's been hitting a little bit better too. Still waiting for that first home run. And I don't think it's going to be an outfielder because the outfield's pretty thin right now. So it looks like it's going to be Brett Baty that goes down unless someone gets hurt or they have some other roster move they can make. So hopefully before McNeil's ready, he can make a little bit more noise. Otherwise, it's going to be another early season struggle for Brett Baty, and back to AAA he goes. Pretty unfortunate stuff, but it's nice to see Luis Angel Acuna get the lion's share of playing time because he deserved it. He really did, and you're seeing flashes of what he can really be. A dynamic, contact hitting, speed threat with a great glove at second base to go up the middle with Francisco Lindor. On the pitching side of things, the bullpen continues to be nails. Just want to go over some quick rankings because it's still shocking. The bullpen is 3rd in baseball in ERA. They're 2nd in FIP with a mark of 2.56. 5th in walk per 9 at 2.7. They are the leading team at keeping the ball in the yard at 0.38 home run per 9 is 1st overall. They're also 6th in whip at 1.02. Just marvelous rankings across the board. I continue to be so impressed by Huascar Brazoban, who finally looks the part of the guy we acquired at last year's deadline. Max Kranick had some tougher outings and actually got demoted to make room for Hagenman on this road trip. He'll be back up soon, though. He's looked great. 11 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs for him. Ryan Stanek continues to look absolutely nasty. So glad that he's back. Reed Garrett still hasn't given up a run. In fact, both him and Stanek, 6 innings pitched, no earned runs. They're the only 2 in the bullpen to have marks that good. But one guy I want to highlight who I didn't talk a lot about last episode, AJ Minter has looked great. He looks fully healthy. I think the Mets did a great job easing him into the season, not overexposing him too much. And that goes for the entire bullpen. I feel like no one's worked a tremendous amount, where last year early in the season, you could definitely point to Reed Garrett getting overworked. Edwin Diaz wasn't getting used as much. There was much more imbalance, and I feel like Carlos Mendoza, with a year of managing under his belt and obviously better luck early in the season, has done a great job managing this bullpen and getting them to their highest potential. Minter's been nails ever since that rough outing against Miami. 5 2/3 innings, no earned runs, 3 hits, no walks, 10 strikeouts since April 4th. So if you're looking for who's going to be your dynamite setup man, AJ Minter might be that guy. And it's nice that the Mets have a dominant lefty. It's nice. It's nice that we don't only have to rely on Dan Young, who's been pitching better as of late. But Minter is a guy that can get both sides out, and he's looked great, so I want to shout him out. On the rotation side of things, length continues to be an issue, but they're still the best rotation in baseball by ERA. 2.54 ERA is 1st in MLB. There's no better rotation in MLB at preventing runs from scoring. It still doesn't feel that way. I know I said this last episode, but it really doesn't feel that way. I feel like, the Mets have been dealing with a lot of traffic, and the whip mark from this rotation is actually among the bottom 10 in baseball, which checks out in my brain. Holmes has had rough innings late in his goes. Griffin Canning, once he gets past the fifth, has been kind of tough. Tyler McGill had a tougher outing. You know, these guys deal with base runners, but the left on base mark has been great by them. They're still walking guys. Their 4.06 walk per nine rate from the rotation is 27th in MLB. That's a bottom four mark, but they're striking out the world. And the rotation has been just as good at keeping the ball in the yard. 0.51 home run per nine rate is also first in MLB. The Mets allow the least opposing home runs of any team in baseball, which is a very welcome sight. So it's nice to go over all the rankings for the Mets pitching staff. The rankings aren't as sexy on the hitting side of things, except for one guy, which is Pete Alonso, who's currently in the top 4 for on base, top 3 for slugging, top 3 for OPS, and top 2 for runs batted in. It's been him, Aaron Judge, and then a handful of other guys. Kyron Paris on the Angels is having a nice start to the year. But Pete Alonso is off to a dream start. I said on Twitter, I haven't seen him this locked in, honestly, since his rookie year in 2019. I know that he had a great 2022 and had stretches, especially in May of that year, where he had the Cardinals walk-off home run and looked really good and was carrying the offense and driving in so many runs. But he's hitting for average. He has more walks than strikeouts. In fact, he has a better walk per strikeout rate right now than Juan Soto. 1.2 to 1.17. Both of them are top 15 in baseball. But still, that's remarkable. That's not really what you think of when you think of Pete Alonso. When he's hitting for average, a 365 average right now, that's when he's at his best. He's going to the opposite field. He had an opposite field double yesterday in the rally against Griffin Jacks. It's just really welcome to see. He's not this one-dimensional pull power hitter that I feel like he gets the rep of sometimes, and he's showing everyone what he's capable of, and it's really fun to watch. And I just feel like you see the pressure lifted off him this year, knowing that there's no big contract dispute looming, although that still could be a thing in this offseason. But I just feel like he's playing with less of a burden on his shoulders. And you know what? It's probably really fun to hit behind Juan Soto. So that's nice too. And I wanted to lead with that because there was a Juan Soto New York Post quote about how hitting with Aaron Judge was different. And he spoke to Mike Puma in the Post. I kind of wish he would stop doing that because it's their job to kind of spin this and make it a story and make it something that it doesn't have to be. I'm going to pull up the exact quote right now. And I want to preface the discussion by saying this. Nothing about what he said is untrue. I think that it probably came at a poor time, but nothing about what he said was not factual in my brain. Basically, the quote boiled down to how, he was getting pitched to differently with Aaron Judge looming in that lineup. And I think we all knew that was going to be a factor. I think the reason why it's annoying that this quote came out is because Pete Alonso is having such a nice start to the year. So it almost felt like I don't want to say a diss, but I will say that it felt like a disservice to Pete Alonso's efforts. He's been the best hitter in the National League, right up there with Aaron Judge's production, although Judge is on a different world. And it just became this story that it didn't need to be. And honestly, Judge's quote and response was great. It was exactly what he needed to do. He just shouted out Pete for being one of the best hitters in baseball and then kind of just brushed it aside. I just think that Soto probably should have kept his comments about it to himself. Even if, they weren't geared to be a certain thing, which I know they weren't. I think Juan Soto was just being forthcoming with how this year's been different so far and how the rest of the season's going to be different. But I do think that the Mets have a more cohesive lineup than the 2024 Yankees did, and I think Soto will see benefits from that as well, more opportunities with runners in the scoring position. But yeah, it was just unfortunate. That coupled with, him with the hood on in the freezing cold, not looking thrilled to be out in Minnesota, it just made for a night of annoying commentary. So I would be remiss if we didn't bring it up at all. But it was definitely an annoying story, to say the least, of this just popping up in the middle of the week with the great start that Aaron Judge has been on. And, Yankee fans are going to want to go at Juan Soto all year long. But for the full quote, for those who didn't hear it, it's definitely different. I had the best hitter in baseball hitting behind me last season. I was getting more attacked and more pitches in the strike zone. I was pitched different last year. Yeah, he's already drawn a ton of walks because he's not getting a ton of pitches in the heart of the zone, especially with runners on. That makes perfect sense to me. And I think Soto probably knew that going into this year as well. And you can see how easily things get spun around just from, honest words. That being said, Soto didn't have a great series in Minnesota. He had a really unfortunate double play in a key rally in the finale where the Mets could have gotten an insurance run that they needed, or just a run. They were still held scoreless at that time. He leads baseball with 4 double plays so far, 4 GIDP. That's not what you want to see from Juan Soto hitting in the 2-hole. So hopefully he can come home, get his first home run at home, and kickstart his season. Still, with the slumping Juan Soto, he still has a 131 OPS plus, 14 walks to 12 strikeouts, and 3 home runs. I think he's going to be just fine. So that wraps up the Mets road trip. There's a couple news tidbits that I want to go through. First of all, shout out Francisco Lindor. He will be the captain of Team Puerto Rico in the 2026 World Baseball Classic. It got announced last night. I can't think of anyone on that team more deserving. I know another team he should be captain of, but we'll get to that soon, hopefully this year. But yeah, it comes on the heels of Judge being announced the captain of Team USA. I think it's really cool that the 2 faces of the New York franchises are going to be captains in the World Baseball Classic. I know that Mets fans probably have some murky feelings towards the WBC because of what happened to Edwin Diaz, but it's still incredibly fun to watch. I'm still incredibly excited to watch it take place again next year. And it's cool that Lindor is going to be front and center. And hopefully Team Puerto Rico can perform really well. Hopefully those are the 2 teams we see in the finals. I'd be down for that. Some roster moves were made to bring up Justin Hageman. Max Kranick got demoted. I'm sure he's going to be back up because the Mets have to put Jose Siri on the injured list. That's probably just going to be a clean cut 1-for-1. Jose Siri suffered a fractured tibia on a foul ball. I don't really know what the timetable is going to be for him, but it looks like Tyrone Taylor is going to step into his starting role, and he's going to need to perform. He hasn't been hitting well to start the season. Had a pretty tough misplay to end the game yesterday, although I don't think he would have had the runner at home. But he's going to need to play better. And I think we all know he's capable of that because we saw really good stretches from Tyrone Taylor last year. So the pressure will be on him. As for our injured guys, Francisco Alvarez was hit on the same injured hand by a hit by pitch in his rehab game. He stayed in the game, hit a home run in that game. It looks like he's going to be just fine. Jeff McNeil has been playing and hitting really well in his rehab stint so far, using a torpedo bat, by the way. So that's an interesting wrinkle to all this. He's also going to play center field today for Single A St. Lucie, which Jeff McNeil has not done a lot of this year. But we talked about how great Luis Angel Acuna has been. His position, second base, he plays it pretty well. They're going to have to find a spot for Jeff McNeil. I don't think they want Brendan Nimmo to play center with his injury history and honestly his poor defensive metrics there as of late. And we just mentioned that Jose Siri is injured in center field, so I think the Mets are taking a shot and saying, if Jeff can play center field, that solves a ton of our problems. It means Tyrone doesn't have to play every day. It means that we don't have to move Luis Angel Acuna out of the starting lineup. And it means our lineup gets a lot better because everyone stays in it. So I'm hoping it works. I mean, Jeff McNeil's always been this super util guy, but this is really stretching the limits of it. So we'll see. But Soto's not moving out of right, and Nimmo's probably not moving out of left. So this feels like the logical conclusion. I don't know. We'll find out. And I'm sure the Mets probably won't just throw him into center field as soon as he's ready at the major league level. Sean Manaea received an MRI that showed improvement a couple days ago. He's going to resume playing catch off flat ground. He's not going to progress beyond that over the next 10 days. The Mets are going to be extra cautious with Sean Manaea, which is smart, but it upsets me as a big Sean Manaea fan because I want to watch him pitch. I want to watch Mets starters go deep into games. We've only really seen that once this year, and Manaea provided that over and over again, especially late in the season last year. So hopefully he can get back soon. I miss him dearly. That's my guy. Other than that, things have been pretty status quo for the Mets. A 3-3 road trip is not exactly what they envisioned going out there, but they're still first place in your NL East. We'll go over the standings real quick, because why not? Mets are 11-7. They lead the way, 1 game ahead of the Philadelphia Phillies, who are 10-8. Just lost a series to those red-hot San Francisco Giants. Marlins remain in third, 8-9. Nationals a game behind them, 7-11. And then the Atlanta Braves, who dropped another series despite getting Spencer Strider back, 5-13. On the season, 6 games behind the Mets, although I know that they'll be back. They will be back at 500 in no time. I'm just trying to put as much ground as I can between myself and the Braves if I'm the Mets. Not too worried about the Phillies, but we'll get our first look at them next week. In fact, we'll do some probables really quick. The Mets are welcoming in the St. Louis Cardinals for a 4-game set at home that starts tonight. Those Cardinals have been mashing So that's going to be an interesting test. The Mets rotation has been great. The Mets pitching has been great overall. The Cardinals offense has been one of the best in the league. So what's going to give, I don't know. But Griffin Canning will get the ball tonight. I guess he's over his illness, whatever that was yesterday. And hopefully the Mets pitching can continue to take hold of their opponents and really hold opposing lineups at bay. Because that's how the Mets are winning ball games. And that feels like it could be a formula for the rest of the season. I know a lot of people haven't bought into this Mets rotation and bullpen as being legit yet. The names don't jump off the page on both sides of the ball for rotation and bullpen. But if you watch them play every day and you watch them pitch every day, these guys are legit. They're nasty. And I really hope that the Mets are just becoming a team year in and year out that just pitches. We know the Brewers' identity with David Stearns in charge over there. They've maintained that even after his departure. Maybe the Mets are next in line to be the team that year in and year out, they find guys, they develop guys, and they just pitch. Be a really welcome sign, especially when you got some expensive position players on the books. It would be helpful to bargain bin for pitching and turn these guys into studs, which the Mets have done so far with Max Kranick and Huascar Brazoban and Clay Holmes, and it's been fun to watch. Don't love all the walks, but that's just part of the formula, I guess. Cardinals for 4 and Phillies for 3 on this 7-game homestand. Should be a lot of fun. I'm finally going to get out to the ballpark this weekend. I still haven't been to a game this year, which is blasphemous, but there's been vacations. I was just in Aruba, which if you're watching on YouTube, I look a little tan. People have been telling me, so I appreciate that. And then a work trip to Chicago. I've been, blocking me from going to see my Mets. So I'm going to go see them Saturday. Really excited about that. Going to see Kodai Senga pitch, which is going to be fun. The atmosphere at Citi Field was electric on their first homestand. I can't wait to go out there and be a part of it. If you're a Mets fan, you haven't been to a game yet, I know April's a little chilly, but let's get out there and support our guys. So let's make sure we have a successful homestand, get back to our winning ways. Cardinals look good. Honestly, this is not a great time to play the Cardinals. They're playing good baseball right now. I feel like as the season goes on, they'll probably fall off a little bit more. We're catching them at a time where they're pretty powerful. And then that Phillies series, I'm sure, is going to be absolutely electric. That follows right after. So we'll have an episode of Shea Station that comes out next week at some point, probably after the Phillies series. Jerry will be back on the mic with me later that week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Hopefully this solo pod was good enough for you. I know that it's always tough to man a show by myself, so hopefully I did okay. If I did, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the Shea Station channel. All that stuff really helps. Leave us a review and a rating on a podcast app. That stuff helps as well. And just thank you so much for your support in this new season. First episode performed really well. We were really happy with it. And can't wait to cover Mets baseball all season long with you guys whenever we can. We appreciate you all. That'll do it for me, though, and this episode of Shea Station. See you next time. LFGN.
Shea Station. Jerry and Charlie. Shea Station. Jerry and Charlie. Thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time where we'll be back.
Shea Station.